Jonathon here, and welcome to Learn to Playthrough, and welcome to my workstation. Today we're going to be finishing the painting process with the painting of the alternate genders. We've got our Gunslinger and our Piano Player. Where I'll be applying their first colors, which are called the base coats, detailing and highlighting if needed, a wash to add some depth and realism, a basing to give a feel of the surroundings, and then finishing off with a varnish to help protect. Now, during this painting process, think of it more as painting tips and tricks than actual painting. For the painting, this is geared towards someone who's picked up a paintbrush at least once. So I'll be painting any miniatures off screen and then returning to discuss the step-by-step of the painting I just did. This way you'll know what you're about to get into. But if you really need to see someone paint these alternate genders from the Shadows of Brimstone's core box, City of the Ancients, well, at the moment, I'm sorry to say that I could not find any videos of anyone painting these alternate genders. And as for the tips and tricks, these are geared towards all levels of painters, as you can never stop learning. So with that, just go ahead and sit back, relax, and enjoy. Now before we begin the painting process, here's a tip regarding how to get the color you want. So if you wanted the color purple, and you did not have that in your painting toolbox here, but you did have the primary colors, which are blue, red, and yellow, you can go ahead and mix the blue and red together to get purple. But say you didn't like that shade and said you wanted it a little bit lighter. You could add white to make it lighter, or you can add some black to make it darker. Easy as that, right? Wrong. Say you mixed it and found that perfect color, then you painted too much and you ran out of the color, or you finished for the day and went to bed, or an emergency came up and you had to leave, or. So, the end result is that the exact color is gone and you'll have to make a new batch. Now, you have to remix and hopefully you get the color just right. Right? Wrong. There's an easier way to do this, and that is to buy more paints. Yep, that's right. Specifically, buy the paint you want to use and start building up that toolbox of paints. So what I did is I went ahead and bought the Army Painter Mega Paint Set. And as you can see here, it contains 50 war paints. It's got a paintbrush in there, and you can never have enough paintbrushes, so that's a good thing. It also has two books here. There's a small book, which is kind of a basic version of the assembling and the painting process, and then the larger book is the same, except just a little bit more information. So, in the end, take your time and be nice to your paints, and your paints will be nice to you. Well, that should do it for now. I got plenty more miniatures to paint, so plenty of tips coming your way. And before we set up the first miniature to paint, I'm going to go ahead and break out those paints to see what's inside for any colors I would like to use for any upcoming miniatures. Plus, I'm going to go ahead and drop a couple of these stainless steel shakers, those agitator balls, into the paints to give them a good mixing. So first up in the painting process is the Gunslinger. After analyzing the Gunslinger, I'll be painting the Gunslinger in 3 steps. Since there is no painting guide that I can use as a reference for what the Gunslinger looks like or what colors to use, I have found several pictures to use as reference, including the hero character sheet. For the paints, I'm going to be using the paints that came with the Shadows of Brimstone Heroes of the Old West paint set. And these are identified by the Western Lawman that is on the front of the bottle, plus some other paints that I found in the Army Painter Mega Paint Set. And these are identified by the color-filled hexagon on the front of the bottle. Now that we're all ready to go, let's go ahead and see what we'll be doing in step 1. In step 1, we're going to be doing those first colors, the base coats, and there's going to be 13 areas on the Gunslinger. We've got the hat, hair, flesh, and the scarf, the coat, shirt, gloves, and sash. We got the pistols and their holsters, the pants, boots, and the base rim. So for the hat, hair, and coat, we're going to be using the Shadow Black. And then for the flesh, we'll be using light flesh. For the scarf and the sash, we'll be using pure red. And for the shirt and the gloves, we'll be using spirit white. And for the pistols, we'll be using pistol metal. For the pants, we'll be using deep blue. And for the boots, we'll be using fur brown. And finally, for the holsters and the base rim, we'll be using dark flesh. Okay, so with all that information and paints ready to go, let's go ahead and start painting our base coats with step 1. Hello there, and welcome back as we just finished up our step 1 of applying those first colors, the base coats, to our Gunslinger. Step 1 took me about an hour to complete, and overall I'm fairly happy with the results. Fairly happy because the colors here actually held back the primer, and the primer normally bleeds through, but even the white held it back fairly well, and I just applied a little bit more white on her shirt, and it's holding back pretty good. Now, we did have a bad thing happen, is we had a death, and as you can see by the picture here, all that black crud that's on the paper towel, it's actually the Shadow Black paint, and for some reason it dried out. And I used this paint about 3 months ago, and everything was fine, but today for some reason it's all dried out. And these paints that I used today, they didn't dry out or nothing bad happened to them, so no idea why or reason or whatever. Now, luckily enough, I got the matte black here from the Army Painter Mega Paint Set, and I'm using that for the hat, hair, and coat, and everything is going good here, so let's keep painting. So as you can see by the picture here of our Gunslinger, everything's looking pretty nice and vibrant, pretty good. You can see some areas that kind of bled over and stuff like that, but that's kind of normal at the beginning with your base coats. Just get that paint on there so that you're able to see the details and such a little bit better, because sometimes just looking at the gray miniature itself, you can't really see the detail that good. You need some paint on there. So what we got here is the first of all is the boots, and I got this light brown color here, this fur brown that I was using. Now when I applied it, with it being wet and goopy, it looked kind of dark in color, but when it dried out, it looks a little bit too light in color. So I'm kind of iffy on this, whether I want to continue with it. I might change it to the dark flesh color that I'm using with the holsters itself there. So we'll see what happens with that during step 2, if I change it or not. And when you're doing your painting, the arms in relation to the body are a little bit close. So even if you're using a fine detail brush, definitely take it a little bit slow getting in there to try and paint, because you might be bumping around and stuff like that. Now up top we did have an issue here. As you can see here, it looks like she is a burn victim. The molding of her face kind of got screwed up there, so you're gonna either have to, bring back the miniature and get your money back, or bite the bullet and try and do something with it. So I figured that I'm not doing the pupil trick to try and put a pupil on her eyes. I'm just doing the old wash trick with this soft tone ink and applying a wash to the face and letting the wash going into the creases to add the darkness. So we'll hopefully that will turn out okay. Next thing we have is around her neck. We got that red scarf, and then off to the right it flows off onto her hair there. Now the issue is around her neck. I started off by just taking a toothpick here, dabbed into the red and drew a line around the neck, but it looked like she had her throat slashed. I didn't want that, so I went ahead and just made a little triangle going down and added it to it, so it looks a little bit better there. Now you can also see the other areas of everything just bleeding over and such, but like I said, that's just typically normal. Just get the paint on there so you can see what's going on. Now here's the picture that I was using as a reference for the red scarf there. And you can see in the picture all it had is just that line going around her neck. And like I said, it looked like her throat was being cut there, so I didn't want that to happen. So went ahead and just added that little V because there really wasn't any kind of molding for that V. So I just added it in and it looks okay. Now in the back here, we got several things to worry about. First of all, we got that the colors bleeding over to different areas, but that's just normal. Don't worry about that. The one that is an issue here is we got blacks all blended together. We got the hat along with the hair and the coat. They're all the same color black. So we got to figure out how we're going to differentiate those three. And I figure that during the highlighting, I'll go ahead and highlight the hat and the coat so that they're going to be a little bit lighter in color. So the hair is going to pop out, being darker in color. So definitely don't worry about painting the same things, the same color. Just try and differentiate them a little bit so that they can look having a separate identity to them. Now one thing we did have an issue with is, as you can see here, is with the holsters, they got the belts and they crisscross in the back. Now the one on the left you can see actually has a molding for that belt, but then the one on the right does not have a molding for that belt. So I just had to take a toothpick, dipped in some of that dark flesh, and then draw a line across to the holster to represent that belt. So like I said, you're going to have to use some paint just to draw things in, like the scarf, or in the case in the back here, the belt for the holsters, so that you can actually see that. Okay, other than that, everything's looking pretty good here. So, well, now that the base coats are applied, let's go ahead and see what we'll be doing in step 2. So for step 2, we're going to do the touch-ups, detailing, highlighting, and then adding a wash. So for the entire model, we'll go ahead and go back and do that touch-up because everything's bouncing over from different areas with different paints. So let's go and get all the paints in the correct area. And then we'll go ahead and start doing some detailing. Now the picture shows that the shirt has got some buttons on it, but I really can't see the molding for the buttons on there. So we're really not going to probably be doing any kind of buttons on the shirt. We'll just leave it a white. And normally there's belt buckles. And we have the belt for the pants, and then we have the belts for the holsters that are crisscrossing. But all three of them are underneath that red sash. So with that, it doesn't really look like we're going to be doing much detailing for our gunslinger. For the highlighting, we'll go ahead and just use the spirit white here, and then go ahead and do the highlighting to show the ruggedness of the Old West. Now, if I do change the boots to the dark flesh, what I want to do is probably stick with this fur brown or get a lighter color or a tan color maybe and use that as a highlighting, because not necessarily you use white only as a highlighting. You want to use the lighter color of the base coat as your highlighting. So in the case of the boots, if I go ahead and do my dark flesh, I'll go ahead and use like the fur brown, which is a lighter brown, or if there's a tan color, I'll go ahead and highlight the boots with that. Okay, other than that, it's looking pretty good with that. And then finally for the wash, we'll be using our soft tone ink and go ahead and applying in there. Now, remember, don't just grab yourself a big brush and glop a bunch on there and slam it on there. You know, use yourself a nice small to medium-sized paintbrush to apply it as if you're applying paints and get it nicely in there. And especially like with the face and the eye sockets, you don't want to have it too deep, otherwise you're going to have this really dark eye socket. And so, you know, ooh, what's up with this gunslinger being all dark eye socket? So just watch when you do the applying of that wash. Well, so with all that information and paints ready to go, let's go ahead and continue on with step 2. Hello there and welcome back as we just finished up step 2 with our touch-ups, detailing, highlighting, and adding a wash with our gunslinger. Step 2 took me about an hour and a half to complete, and overall I'm very happy with the results here. Especially with the wash, it definitely took the level of appearance from here all the way up to here as it filled in all those nooks and crannies with the wash to add the nice level of shadows to it. So let's go and take a look at our gunslinger to see what we did. And first up here was the picture from step 1 where we had the question, do we go ahead and change the color of our boots from the fur brown and then change it to dark flesh? So that was very questionable there. So I went ahead and did a test strip here. I went ahead and painted the boot on the left with the dark flesh and looked at them both, and they look pretty nice. And then I'm trying to figure out, okay, well, which one am I going to stay with, because you can't sit there and paint over them a bunch of times, because every time you add some paint, you're adding another layer. Keep adding layers, you're going to end up taking away from the detail of the miniature, and that's something you don't want to do. So I went ahead and decided on the dark flesh. And there was a couple reasons behind this. One was the appearance of it was very pleasing. So that's definitely a big plus. So look at your colors that you want to paint your miniature with and say, okay, does that look like a nice color I want to use? Sure, then go ahead and put it on. Second of all, the boots match the color of the holsters and the holster belts. Now, that was just one. The other one that we have, the sash with the scarf, they're both red. The gloves with the shirt are both white. And then the coat with the hat are black. So we got colors are matching different areas. Now, if you end up painting the whole miniature black or blue or green or whatever color, then it's going to look kind of weird, and you know, in the overall long run, and it's just going to look kind of ugly, and you're going to want to repaint it. So that's definitely some of the reasons that I decided to go ahead and stick with the dark flesh, and overall it's looking very nice. So I went ahead and I did our touch-ups here. So I cut the lines of the overflow of the paint from area to area and cut them all down so everything was looking very nice. But one area was the face again. So still looking like that burn victim. There pretty much was no help to fix the face with paints. So I'm just going to have to leave it with that. You're just going to have to be in the hands of the mold, that if it comes out great, it comes out great, and if it comes out looking like this, then that's what you got. Went ahead and painted over the other paints that were overflowing into the other areas, and then had to fix up the scarf on her chest underneath the white shirt there. So just added some paints there, a little bit here, a little bit there. Definitely, if you're going to paint something, either paint it all one color, or definitely leave enough area for that other color underneath to come out so that it shows a layering effect or a 3D effect to it. Alright, over here on the back, went ahead and finished the touch-ups and did the holster belt on the right. I went ahead and took the blue from the pants and cut a line to cut down that blobby look, to make it look more thinner and streamlined, so it looked more like a belt than just a glob mess of brown. So everything seemed to be doing pretty good there. Now next step we see here is the highlighting, and normally I should be doing the detailing, but we didn't have many detailings to do here, and after I looked at it during touch-ups, there really wasn't any detailing to do. So the buttons on the shirt were kind of insignificant, so I just skipped those, and I said that the belt buckles for the pants belt and the holster belts were underneath the sash, so you can't even see them, so just went ahead and skipped the detailing. So now we're going on to the highlighting of our miniature here, and just took some of the spirit white and then took a highlight brush, add a little bit of that, and just wiped it off on the paper towel, and then you go ahead and flick it on your finger here so you can definitely see the looks of the white coming off. And when there's hardly anything there, just start giving a quick, now not really a scrub, but a wisp across the surface of the miniature until it looks pretty nice there. And on the back here, did the same thing, just did some wisping of the white across here. Now, when I came across the deal with the hat, the hair, and the coat, like I said, they're all one color, they're all black, so we had to go ahead and distinguish between all three of them. So I went ahead and did some highlighting on the coat, then I did highlighting on the hat, and now the hair being black isn't going to be a black void that sucks out the light. There's still going to be some parts on it that might be a little bit shiny. And by looking at the miniature itself, it looks very black compared to the hat and the coat. Now in the picture though, you can see that it looks kind of shiny, but that's just the light above shining off of the black surface. So overall, it turned out very nice that there is a differential of the black hair actually standing out from the hat and the coat. Next we went ahead with the wash, and when you apply it, remember, don't just grab yourself a big paintbrush and slob it on there. You know, I went ahead and used anywhere from the fine detailing paintbrush to a base coating paintbrush. So if I'm going to do everything at once, I just use the base coating paintbrush, which is kind of like a small to medium paintbrush. And then afterwards, I went ahead and used that fine detailing paintbrush to get into the areas that maybe were missing some of the wash, or I wanted to concentrate the wash a little bit more. So like I said before, I don't do the pupil trick, trying to get a pupil in the eyeball there to say, oh look, they have eyes. I just go ahead and do the wash trick. But you know what? Even a wash didn't save her face. So I'm sorry there, Gunslinger, but you're not going to have that good looking of a face. But from a view of maybe, you know, 1.5 feet, 2 foot, it actually doesn't look that bad. I can see the face, I can see darkness on there, which shows texture and details and, you know, 3-dimension. Instead of just a flat looking face, it's actually, you know, sticks out. So it's coming out pretty good there. Now if you remember the last picture of the scarf on her chest by her opening of her shirt, it looked kind of, the colors kind of looked kind of scrambled a little bit. But by adding wash in there, it's kind of like wash went in there and became like a filler, and now it kind of blended everything together really nice. So it looks pretty nice there. And off the back here, we got the wash doing its job, filling in the crevices and stuff like that, especially like on the gloves there, and showing some nice depth and thickness. And then underneath the coat, then you got the coat, and then you got the white of the shirt, and then it comes back to the sash, so it's showing some darkness there. And then the hat with the hair and the coat, I mean, they're all black, and you put a wash on them, it's kind of black on black, so you really can't tell that big of a deal. So you just have to go with the flow on that one to decide, you know, how much you want to put on there. But overall, that's looking very good. Well, that should do it for step 2. And with our final step remaining, let's go ahead and see what we'll be doing in step 3. So for step 3, we're going to be doing the basing and protecting of our miniature. For the basing on the base, we're going to go ahead and apply some gravel on there, and then we'll go ahead and put that dead bush off to the side, and then put some different size rocks all around. And then if there's anything else that we can find that might want to make the scene look more like a Western or more of something else, we'll go ahead and do that. But otherwise, don't overdo your base with a bunch of stuff so it looks like a big pile up of a junkyard. So definitely just put a couple things there, but not a lot of things. Then for the protecting, we'll be using that spray-on varnish from Testors, which is that spray lacquer. There it is. And that matte varnish, which is going to dull down the look of your miniature so it's not all glossy. And definitely remember that if your miniature wants to be glossy, then, well, don't spray the matte varnish on there because that stuff's going to dull it down. There are other levels of spray lacquer you can use to keep that glossy look, but the aspect of it is that you want to protect your miniature with that spray, so definitely use that. So with all that information, spray and other items ready to go, let's go ahead and finish our miniature with step 3. Hello there, and welcome back as we just finished up step 3 with our basing and protecting of our gunslinger. Step 3 took me about 30 minutes to complete, and wow, I am very impressed by the outcome here, as the base definitely pulls everything together to say this is definitely a Wild West scene. So let's go and take a look at what we did here. As you can see here, our gunslinger, she's set back on the base. Now it's all personal preference. You could have her in the middle or up front, but I went ahead and put her back so that I could have the open area in front, and I could put some objects in there like the dead bush and some big rocks. Now if you took the miniature and put her towards the front, you could put like a fence line or a bush line in the back to make it look like a backdrop. So like I said, all personal preference. So I went ahead and put a couple dead bushes there on the left and the large rocks and set it all up there, and it's looking pretty good. Now definitely with the dead grass that I used for the dead bush, take it and then twist the ends and then put a glob of glue in the area that you're going to put the dead bush there. And we're using the Gorilla Super Glue Gel. And then go ahead and take that bush and put it in place, hold it there for about 5-10 seconds and slowly let go of it. And then let that dry in place for like a minute. And the reason being is because when I look at my dead bushes here, they look kind of scrawny and skinny. Whereas at the picture, it shows them looking kind of thick and full. And so what happened is that I had a piece of that like dead grass off hanging that makes up the dead bush, and I grabbed it and pulled it, and a chunk of the bush came with it. So definitely don't rush through this process. Let the stuff glue in place, stay, then go on to your next part. So we're all ready to continue on here, and we put some of that super glue down onto the base, put a couple globs in some open areas, then took a toothpick and then slid it around the open area and then around the rocks, between the rocks and the base rim, and got it all set. And then I wanted to take the rocks and put them away from the base rim so that when I did the basing with the gravel, it would be between the rocks and the base rim. So that's where you put some glue in there. And when you're ready, just take your whole miniature and slide it right underneath all of that material that you're using. In this case, the gravel. And then go ahead and push some of the gravel up on top of the base. And then I use the end of an X-Acto knife, and it's about a little more than 1/4 of an inch. And I'll go ahead and stamp it down so that I'm pushing the material, the gravel, into the glue next to the base. So you don't want to have the gravel up here and the base down here in this big area where the glue is at, because later on if you put some more material on there or paint or whatever, it might look a little bit weird with the gravel floating in air. So push it down in there, get it down into the glue, and then the glue will adhere to it and pull it and keep it onto the base. So when you're done with that, just take it out and just give it a shake so all the excess stuff flies all over the place. And then you're going to have a bunch of the gravel hanging all over the place. So I'll go ahead and just take my thumb and just brush it along the rim, getting anything knocked off. And then make sure you do this really quick, otherwise the stuff's going to start drying. Then I take a X-Acto knife, because the end is pretty rigid, and I'll use that to start flicking off the gravel that's on the base rim, and then also the gravels that's stuck on the rocks. I'll go ahead and flick off, and also next to her boots, because I don't want any kind of rocks on top of her boots, but just around them is fine. There it is. Base rim's looking all nice because there's nothing hanging over onto it. The bushes are all cut down, and everything is looking good. And then over on this angle, everything's still looking good. Like I said, I took those big rocks and pushed them towards the middle a little bit, away from the edge of the base rim. That way when I did some gluing around it, the gravel would be around the rocks. And then off the back, looking pretty good. You can't really see the rock in the back because it's kind of washed out on the picture, but other than that, it's looking pretty good back here. So you look at it and say, yep, that looks pretty good. So we're all done with that. So our final part is the protecting, and we're going to go ahead and use the spray lacquer from Testors. And we're going to go ahead and spray that on. And when you spray it on, it's going to definitely look really, really shiny. And it looks a little bit shiny in the picture here, but from the time that I walked from the back of the house to the front where our workstation's at, it did dry down a little bit. And then several minutes later, when I look at the miniature itself, it is very dried down to a matte finish. And on the back, it's looking a little bit glossy there, but it did, dry down here, so it's a kind of a matte looking finish here. So it's looking very good. All right. Well, there you have it, our Gunslinger. All the way from assembly to primed, step 1, step 2, and finally step 3. The overall time for the Gunslinger, including painting, changing of paints, drying, gluing, etc., was around 3 hours. Now with the Gunslinger complete, let's go ahead and continue on with the piano player. After analyzing the piano player, I'll be painting the piano player in 3 steps. Now there is no painting guide that I can use as a reference for what the piano player looks like or what colors to use, but I have found several pictures to use as reference, one of them being the hero character sheet. Now for the paints, I'm going to be using the paints that came with the Shadows of Brimstone Heroes of the Old West paint set. And these are identified by the Western Lawman on the front of the bottle, plus some other paints that I found in the Army Painter Mega Paint set. And these are identified by the color-filled hexagon on the front of the bottle. So now that we're ready to go, let's go ahead and see what we'll be doing in step 1. In step 1, we'll be applying those first colors, called the base coats, to 11 different areas. We got the hat, hair, flesh, tie, vest, and shirt, the bag, axe, pants, shoes, and the base rim. For the hat, hair, tie, pants, and shoes, we'll be using the matte black. For the flesh, we got light flesh. For the vest, we'll be painting that half and half. So for the front half, we'll be using Grimoire Purple. And then for the back half, we'll be using matte black. Then for the garters that's on the piano player's sleeves, we'll be using Grimoire Purple. And for the shirt, we'll be using Spirit White. For the bag, we'll be using Leather Brown. For the axe, on the handle, we'll be using Oak Brown. And then on the axe head, we'll be using Shining Silver. And finally, for the base rim, we'll be using Dark Flesh. Okay, so with all that information and paints ready to go, let's go ahead and start painting our base coats with step 1. Hello there and welcome back as we just finished up our step 1 of applying those first colors, the base coats, to our piano player. Step 1 took me about an hour and 15 minutes to complete, and overall, ugh. Yeah, this wasn't the greatest miniature to paint. There was kind of an annoyance starting out, but once I figured out exactly what was going on, it actually wasn't that bad. The miniature molding had a lot of crisscrossing going on it, plus a lot of close areas, and I'll talk about that here pretty soon. First of all, let's go ahead and take a look at our miniature and see what we got for our piano player. As you can see, he doesn't look that bad. You know, maybe apply a wash right now and everything would be fine, but no, we're going to just keep going with them and get all the way through to the end. So as you can see, we got some bleeding over from the Grimoire purple onto the white shirt, and we also had some issues with the hand and the X handle. So let's go ahead and take a little bit closer look here. And I talked about the miniature molding where we had a lot of crisscrossing going over, and what I call it is called inside out painting. And as you can see here, from the chest area, you got the white shirt, black tie, you got the vest, and then the bag strap. Now, the inside out painting is that you're going to paint the lowest level first and then go up higher. So you're definitely going to start by painting the white shirt first. Now slop that white paint on there to get it in there, and then once it's dry, then you can go ahead and paint the black tie, and then paint the Grimoire purple on the vest, and then once everything's done there, you can finish it off by doing the leather brown for the strap on the bag. Now most of the time people are going to want to paint stuff first, like they're going to want to paint the strap first, and then they're going to try and paint everything else underneath it, and then it's going to be an annoyance because then you're going to end up putting paint onto the strap, and then you're going to have to just go back over it. So like I said, inside out painting, it's going to be making it a little bit easier for you to paint the areas in only one shot. So we also had it on his face, and I didn't do anything this time because he's going to have a black mustache, but as you can see, he does not have a black mustache. So at the moment I just painted his face flesh, and then once everything is complete with his face, then I'll go ahead and I'll paint the mustache later. So do the job right the first time, you don't have to worry about doing any touch-ups later on. Okay, well, our piano player, yesterday, he was all nice and happy, and he was playing his piano and everything like that, and he was finishing up his song, and he tilted his head back as he was finishing off the song, and all of a sudden someone shot at him and didn't hit him, but it actually hit the brim of his hat. So as you can see here, at the front of his hat, he's got a hole in the brim. Now, the molding of your miniature is going to come screwed up sometimes, so you're going to have to either say, all right, I'm going to live with it, or maybe get some of that green stuff out and go ahead and fix the brim of the hat. So I'm going to leave it as is to say, hey, he got the brim of his hat shot. We don't do that. That's not nice. So anyway, we'll go on to the back. And everything looks good here also. Now we did have some bleeding over of the garter on the piano player's left sleeve there. It's bleeding off onto the white shirt. And then as you go down farther on the white shirt, you can see that there's some black there. So like I said, the arm is a little bit close to the body, and you just got to watch out when you do some painting there that some of the paint is going to jump over to the other areas. Now, another issue that I had was really weird was that I thought I was painting a lot on the black, but there seems to be these little pits that were in there. So I don't know what the deal is with that. If for some reason the primer didn't fill them in good enough, or the color from just the base coats are not filling them in good enough. But needless to say, just gonna have to go with the flow and just keep repainting. Alright, well, Now that the base coats are applied, let's go ahead and see what we'll be doing in step 2. So for step 2, we'll be doing our touch-ups, detailing, highlighting, and then adding a wash. So for the entire model, we'll go ahead and do the touch-ups for all those areas that bled onto these other areas, and make sure that you do, inside out, that you paint the one that's farthest down first and come back. After that, we'll be doing some detailing. So on the piano player's vest, he's got 4 buttons, and we'll go ahead and add some of that shining silver that we applied to the axis head. We'll go ahead and put that on his buttons for his vest. And then we'll go ahead and do some highlighting. We'll take some spirit white and go ahead and highlight him up a little bit. Now, he's a piano player, he's always inside, but you know what, we'll give him a little bit of a rugged Wild West look for him. And then when we're done with that, we'll go ahead and apply the wash, which is the soft tone ink. And remember, don't just grab a big brush and glop them on there. Use a small brush and apply it, nicely and evenly, so everything turns out okay. So, with all that information and paint's ready to go, let's go ahead and continue on with step 2. Hello there and welcome back, as we just finished up step 2 with our touch-ups, detailing, highlighting, and a wash with our piano player. Step 2 took me about an hour to complete, and overall I'm very happy with the results here. Especially this wash that we did at the end of step 2 definitely ties everything together. So let's go ahead and take a look at our piano player. As you can see, the runoffs of paint to different areas have been fixed up here, so it's looking pretty good. Now, by looking at this, you can see that the Grimoire purple from the vest and the garter on the left side there, on the top part of the sleeve, looks like it's still kind of an issue there. But instead of just taking some more spirit white and painting over it, we're going to go ahead and do something down the line here that can alleviate that problem. So we'll take a look at it then. Otherwise, everything's looking pretty good here. And our back, the collar's looking nice and white there, going around the back of his neck. And then that purple and white on the left arm has been alleviated, so everything's looking good here. After our touch-ups, we go into detailing. And I said the only detailing we had was the buttons on the vest. And we're going to go ahead and paint them the shining silver. And I only painted 3 out of the 4 there. I missed that top one. I didn't really see it. So we're going to go ahead and fix that problem in the highlighting section. So here we are highlighting our piano player. Just took some spirit white and then applied it with a highlighting brush, dipped it into the paint, and then brushed off most of it on a paper towel. And then come by and wisp it on your thumb here to actually see how much is remaining on the brush. And then once there's hardly anything left, just do some nice wisping across the miniature here to put it on the highlighting of the miniature, the mold. And everything's looking good there. Now we zoom in here. You can see the issue with the Grimoire purple is still there. And also the top button of the vest has now been painted, so everything's going good there with the buttons. And then on the back, mostly with the highlighting is to paint the details that are highlighted up from the miniature itself, but sometimes you can get flat areas like the back of the vest there. And just because everything is all white, don't stop and look at it and say, okay, this is going to be an issue, because you still have the other processes that you have to do to it, and sometimes it might knock things down. So we'll just continue on there. And then also, looking at the top of the hat, it being so highlighted like that, you figure there's a big light source. But actually sometimes highlighting is representing the wear and tear on the items. So as you can see, the hat is definitely a well-worn item. So once we're all done with the highlighting, we go ahead and go into the wash. And everything is looking really nice here as it's dulled down some of that highlighting, especially on the pants where the white on the black, and you can hardly see any white down below on the shoes. And we'll go zoom in on him, and everything's looking really good here. Now remember, we had that issue with the Grimoire purple on the vest and the garter on the left side there, on the top of the sleeve. As you can see, it is gone. So definitely, like I said, you don't just take a paint and cover another paint and everything's good. Sometimes you can do a different process. So by doing a wash on top of it, it actually alleviates that issue. Now another thing is, watch out on how much wash you actually put on a miniature. So as you can see with the sleeves, they do look kind of dingy, and don't get to the point that if you put too much wash on there, it's actually going to look like, hey, you need to actually wash your clothes because they look dirty. So definitely just be sparingly with your wash and everything will come out really good. So on the back, everything's looking good, and remember the black had a lot of white on it, but now the wash knocked it down and it's going into the folds of the sleeves. So everything is looking very, very good. Well, that's going to do it for step 2, and with our final step remaining, let's go ahead and see what we'll be doing in step 3. So for step 3, we're doing that basing and protecting of our miniature. For the base, just looking at it, saying we got this big open area in the front, so I'm going to go ahead and put a dead bush here on the left side, and then we'll put some big rocks in there, and then we'll cover the whole base up with some gravel. And then for the protecting, I'm still using the spray lacquer from Testors. And then I'll go ahead and protect up the whole miniature. So, with all that information, spray and other items ready to go, let's go ahead and finish our miniature with step 3. Hello there, and welcome back as we just finished up step 3 with our basing and protecting of our piano player. Step 3 took me about 45 minutes to complete, and overall, wow. The basing along with the wash definitely pulls everything together to say this is definitely a Wild West looking miniature. Excellent. So let's go ahead and take a look at our piano player to see what we did. As you can see here, we went ahead and put the piano player a little bit back, and I did that so I could leave the front opened up a little bit to put some objects. And we're going to have that dead bush on the left hand side, and got some big rocks, and then put some gravel over everything. Now with the big rocks, I decided to find a rock that was like jutting out of the ground. And when I found the rock, of course it didn't have a flat bottom, so I had to do a little bit of reconstructive surgery on it. So I went in and took the rock and got some sandpaper and went ahead and just started sanding down the rock so it would be flat. So there it is, looking all nice and flat. Alright, then I went ahead and just took some super glue, put it on the base, and I applied the dead grass to make a dead bush, and then the big rocks. So I got a couple there in the front and one in the back, and everything's looking good. And of course I took the rocks and put them towards the middle so that I could have some of the gravel go around the front of the rocks, between the rocks and the base rim. And when everything was all nice and good, I went ahead and put some super glue onto the base, then just grabbed a toothpick and just started moving around the super glue around the areas. And once the super glue was all spread around the base, and definitely not on the base rim, because when you paint it, it'll look kind of tacky, I went ahead and just placed the miniature into some of the gravel. And then go ahead and put the gravel and push it all over the top of the base there, and then go ahead and stamp it down, and that way you can have the gravel push into the super glue instead of just laying on top of it. And once that's complete, go ahead and pull it out here and just shake it off and give it a little tap down, and all the excess will come flying off. we'll go ahead and just take your thumb, go around the base rim, and any kind of gravel that's just hanging off, we can go ahead and knock that stuff down. And then once that's knocked down, we'll go ahead and go at the dead bush there with some scissors. Come at it high, low, left, right, up, down, different angles. Just give it some snips so that it looks like some kind of a natural formation when it was alive. That's looking pretty good there. And as you can see here, like I said, I took those rocks and moved them towards the middle so we can have the gravel between the rocks and the base rim. Everything's looking good in the back. Alright, that is looking good. So once you're all happy with it, I went ahead and took that spray lacquer from Testors and gave it a nice spray down so it could protect the miniature. And on the back you can see it's still all nice and glossy and wet looking. And of course that only lasts for about a minute or so, and then it'll get all dried out to look like a nice dull down flat finish. Excellent, excellent. Well, there you go. There's our piano player. All the way from assembly to primed. Step 1. Step 2, and finally Step 3. The overall time for the piano player, including painting, changing of paints, drying, gluing, etc., was around 3 hours. Well, that should do it. That is going to complete the painting of the Gunslinger and the piano player. Now that our two heroes are all in color and ready to go, let's go ahead and get our two heroes back down to the gaming table for some more action.